Hi, welcome. In 2024, 7 American tech companies, including Apple, Microsoft, and Google, together reached a market cap of over $13 trillion. That's more than the combined GDP of Germany, France, the UK, and Italy combined. Meanwhile, the entire continent of Europe, with its 744 million people, its 44 nations, and its world-class universities, has failed to produce a single consumer tech company to rival them. Let that sink in. Europe, the birthplace of modern science and the Industrial Revolution, is now a digital ghost town. Now this goes beyond a business story. It's a tragedy, a tale of brilliance, regulation, fragmentation, and lost opportunity. Today, we explore how a continent that invented the very bones of the internet fell behind in the very world it helped create, and whether there's a way back. Long before Silicon Valley was born, Europe led the digital world. Alan Turing, the British mathematician, cracked Nazi codes and laid the foundation for modern computing. Tim Berners-Lee, also British, invented the World Wide Web at CERN in Switzerland. Konrad Zuse, a German, built the first programmable computer in the 1930s, before most Americans even knew what a computer was. Europe was in a global leadership. In the 1980s and 1990s, companies like Siemens, Ericsson, and Nokia were synonymous with technological advancement. But then, the lights started to dim. Let's play a game. If I ask you to name 5 American consumer tech companies, you'd probably do it without thinking. Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft. You wouldn't find it that easy if asked to name 5 European ones. Here's a startling fact. In 2024, not a single European company was among the top 20 most visited websites in the world, except Yandex from Russia and Naver from South Korea. That means in your daily life, your maps, your search engine, your streaming, your shopping, your social media, you are completely embedded in a world built by America and Asia. And despite all its resources, Europe contributes less than 17% of the market value of the world's largest tech companies. This is what Ruben Schaubrook of McKinsey & Company said in a recent podcast.
It's no secret that Europe has lagged behind both America and Asia over the past years in terms of TMT. And if you look at different metrics, you can see that. So if you look at, for example, total market capitalization, Europe's share has dropped from 30% to only 7% of total TMT market capitalization, which represents an $8 trillion loss. Secondly, if you look at the top companies, right, the top 50 companies in terms of market cap, there used to be like 22 European companies there. Today we're down to 4.
And that's what makes this story so perplexing. Because Europe has everything. Oxford, Cambridge, ETH Zurich, TU Munich, and the Sorbonne are world-class universities. BMW, Airbus, and Siemens still dominate legacy industries. In 2023, EU countries spent €381.4 billion on R&D. Europe has universal healthcare, efficient public transport, livable cities. And interestingly, the EU led the world with GDPR, forcing global tech giants to comply with the tenets of ethical AI. So, what happened? Let's talk about borders and bureaucracy. Unlike the United States, a unified market with one set of regulations, the EU is a fragmented maze. 27 countries, 24 official languages, different labor laws, tax codes, and data regulations. Launching a startup in Europe is like trying to play chess with 44 different rulebooks. Take Uber, for example. It launched in Paris in 2011, but was soon banned in Hungary and Bulgaria, blocked in Germany and the Netherlands, and faced violent protests in Italy and France. Fires were set, streets were blocked, drivers were assaulted. Eventually, the European Court of Justice ruled that countries could ban Uber without EU permission. Imagine being a startup trying to scale in that environment. This leads us to brain drain. People like Philippe Lafont, a French-born hedge fund billionaire, built his empire in America, not France. Did you know the company Snowflake, a cloud data juggernaut now worth over $60 billion, was founded by 3 French engineers? Yet, it's seen as an American success story. In fact, over the past decade, the percentage of EU science graduates who stayed overseas jumped from 49% to 73%. Let's put this in perspective. Less than a century ago, Europe commanded empires that spanned the globe, dictating trade, law, language, even borders. Today, that same continent is struggling to hold on to its own talent, watching helplessly as its brightest minds build the future elsewhere. But this is not just people, it's capital. In 2024, American and Canadian startups raised over $184 billion in VC funding. Meanwhile, the entire EU couldn't raise barely a third of that. The US invests 0.7% of GDP into venture capital. The EU does 0.2%. In Europe, investors prefer safe bets, B2B software, fintech, or healthcare. But when it comes to high-risk, consumer-facing ideas, forget it. As Swedish entrepreneur Hampus Jakobsen put it, most EU VCs are wine and dine talkers, not risk takers. That's why Europe built SAP, ASML, and Spotify. Great companies, yes, but only ASML is globally essential. And you'd agree with me that none are lifestyle changing in the way that Google or Amazon are. Here's the irony. Europe doesn't build the platforms, but it controls them. Through the Brussels effect, EU regulations often become de facto global standards. The GDPR is reshaping global privacy. In 2024, the AI Act became the world's first comprehensive AI law. Apple was forced by the EU to adopt USB-C chargers. Meta was fined €1.2 billion for data misuse. But regulation comes at a cost. A cost that only big companies can pay. Startups buckle under the weight of compliance. So, the EU may protect users, but it also stifles the very innovation it needs. It is even more interesting to know that Europe is still debating on right or wrong AI laws while Asia is building. Japan gave us Sony, Nintendo, and Panasonic. South Korea gave us Samsung and LG. China exploded with Huawei, Tencent, Alibaba, ByteDance, and BYD. In China, for example, the government backed ByteDance and Alibaba through massive subsidies, favorable policies, and protected access to its vast internal market, giving these companies the time and capital to scale before facing global competition. It's a stark contrast. While Europe burdens startups with red tape, Asia shields them with rocket fuel. But before we give up on Europe, let's realize there's still life. Estonia, a nation of just 1.3 million people, became the first fully digital government. Citizens vote, pay taxes, and even launch businesses online. France has quietly built the third largest startup ecosystem in Europe, thanks to government-backed digital health platforms. Mon Espace Santé is transforming medical record management. The European Chips Act, worth €43 billion, aims to reduce reliance on Asian semiconductor suppliers. And then there's ASML, the Dutch company making the only machines in the world capable of producing advanced chips. Without ASML, there is no Apple, no Nvidia, no AI revolution. And with this, could we conclude that Europe may be harnessing a different kind of power? Maybe Europe will never beat Silicon Valley at its own game. Maybe the path forward isn't to clone America, but to do something uniquely European. Imagine a tech industry rooted in privacy, transparency, and ethical innovation. One that doesn't sell your data, manipulate your emotions, or gamify addiction. Maybe Europe's real power isn't just in what it builds, but in what it prevents. But is that enough? Europe led the world into the first industrial revolution. It rebuilt from 2 world wars. It gave us democracy, the the welfare state, and the World Wide Web. But in the 21st century, a new revolution is underway, and so far, Europe is just watching. So the question is this: in a world defined by technology, is it enough to simply regulate the future? Or must you have the courage to build it too? What are your thoughts? Kindly share with me and the viewers. If you randomly came across this video, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and be notified whenever I post a new video. My name is Edward Mbarish, and you have been watching Fascinating Tales.